There's no such thing as a child who hates to read. There are only children who have not found the right book. Frank Serafini. Welcome to today's episode. We are looking at writing for today's Ghanaian child. This is Ghana Made Lit by the Goethe-Institut Ghana. And my name is Dr. Fafaliche, and I'm happy to be your host for today. So on the panel today, we have Miss...
I'm Miss Selassie Mensah, and I'm a young Ghanaian author who has 5 books to her credit. My first published book was at the age of 14, titled The Broom, which explores ethnic conflict through the eyes of a young child. I also have several stories, poems, and rants on my website, selassiemensah.com, which you can definitely check out. Thank you very much.
Yes, please.
And I'm Kezia Agbenyaga. I am the author and publisher relations manager for West Africa for World Reader. World Reader is an organization that's on a mission to make books accessible, and we work with local content creators, authors, and publishers in whatever country we are in to make sure that the children we are working with in those countries have relevant content to read and explore and have fun with books.
Thank you. You're all welcome.
Thank you.
So on this episode, we are going to tackle the growing needs of the Ghanaian child. And, okay, so I want to try and remember my very first book that I read, but memory fails me. So please, what was the first book you ever read?
I can't remember, but I think I have just like short memories of it. It was a very colorful book. It had, it was like an encyclopedia, very colorful. It had the names of things and places and illustrations in them. That's what I can recall. But growing up in my formative years, I was exposed to a lot of storybooks because my dad would always come home from work bearing gifts of storybooks, and I enjoyed reading them. So I remember reading a lot of Enid Blyton books by Enid Blyton, Babysitter's series, Babysitter's Club, and I also read Sweet Valley Twins, and the Boxcar Kids. What else? There were so many.
Goosebumps.
Animorphs.
Nancy Drew.
Oh, you're reminding her.
Hardy Boys.
Yes,
yes,
the
Hardy
famous
Boys.
5.
The famous 5.
Yes, I read all of those books, and I remember when my early teens, I remember reading the Left Behind series by Jerry B. Jenkins and Tim LaHaye.
Yeah.
Then I switched into John Grisham, Dan Brown, reading a lot of foreign books.
Okay.
So I would say that largely I was exposed to foreign books.
Wow.
It was only in my, should I say, middle teens, that's when I became more conscious and intentional about my reading. So I began to read and pick books by Ghanaian authors. So books from Amata Edu, and then Ngugi wa Thiong'o, you know, the African Writers series by Heinemann.
I remember those ones.
Yes. Yeah, and Purple Hibiscus.
Yeah.
And then Peggy Opon.
I know.
Oh my. All those books.
She's just dropping all the titles.
Yes. Like, these books really influenced me, and I particularly like these books because they were very relatable.
Yeah.
I could see the things going on in my society. Amadako too was very good.
Amadako is good.
Yes, her book Faceless was one gripping novel. I can never forget that.
I
book.
can't either.
Yes.
Kezia, what about you?
I honestly don't remember the first book I read because, well, I was told I started reading at a very young age, say about 3. But let's say the first book that I remember reading is titled Hannah the Spy. I honestly don't remember the author, but I think I read that book when I was in class 3. And from then I'd read so many books. Almost all the books that she has mentioned, I have them on my list too. Like all the books that Ghanaian girls grew up reading, Harlequin, those are books.
Sweet Valley High.
Yes, all of them. The first African novel I read, written by Ghanaian, I read that when I was in SS 1 or 2, and it was gripping. And I remember it because it was about female genital mutilation. And I haven't been able to get it out of my mind since then. Yeah, so that's the first book, Ghanaian book or African book that I was exposed to. After that, well, obviously, as a literature student, I was doing Chinua Achebe, I was doing My Husband Has Gone Mad Again, and all the other African
gods
writers.
have to be blamed.
The gods have to be blamed. Marriage of Anansua, all those ones, yeah. But what I picked up myself to read was a book about female genital mutilation.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting, like, all the names that you mentioned, I think I've read almost all of them.
Yeah.
I remember the first Ghanaian book that I actually read was in class 4, The Dancing Tortoise by, is it Na something something? I've actually forgotten the rest of her name. And it was quite interesting because it was about this girl called Jifa from the Volta region who was betrothed to this guy. You know, that olden day practice where right from the young age you knew who you are going to marry. And then she was sent to serve the guy in his house while the guy goes to school. It was an interesting story because the guy came back from school one day and raped her. And then she got pregnant and they had to start the marriage quite early when she wasn't prepared for it. It wasn't like, I really, really loved it because it brought out issues about child marriage, people who have to stop schooling because they didn't have a choice, their choice was taken away from them. I brought that up because you mentioned reading foreign books.
Yeah.
Okay. How did that influence your imagination? I'm asking because genuinely, when I used to read Enid Blyton, there was this particular book called The Secret Island, where the 5 kids were stranded and then they had to plug things and oh my God, how I used to wish I was stranded on an island. So that's what I'm asking. How did those books influence your imagination?
Man, they took me places, like places I've not been to before because my imagination runs wild, and maybe that's why I'm an author, because all of these books, I was so enthralled and, you know, intrigued by how writers could create their, like, very
Their own world.
interesting worlds with their words, just with their words. And so for me, it's really played with my imagination. I mean, I met a lot of characters that I wish I could meet in real life. Yes, and it helped me in a way. I mean, I could almost feel the snow when they talk about snow.
Yeah.
I could almost feel like I could see the northern lights when they talk about northern lights in the Arctic region. You get it? So for me, it's really opened my mind up, and I'm grateful for all those memories. So I was writing a lot about, you know, snow and foreign
that was
characters,
what you were exposed to.
foreign names, using foreign names like that. And people used to read it in class. We'll pass it around for them to read. And they said it was interesting. But when I showed it to my dad, he was like, you need to write more Ghanaian stories. When he said that, it kind of opened me up to observe what was going around in my society. And that's when I opened myself up to all those things, like sitting in a church, or I mean, listening to the sounds of the markets, moving around millions of people, sitting in hotel lobbies, listening to conversations, bringing that Ghanaian culture into my stories. So it's really opened me up and made me more observant.
Okay. Kezia, why do you think, before you answer the question on how it's influenced your imagination, why do you think those were the main books that all of us sort of went, like, that was what we had? Why do you think so?
Yeah, I think it could be, I am not so sure, 100% sure, but it could be because we didn't have a very vibrant publishing industry then. So even the local books that were, by local books, I mean books by Ghanaian authors, were being published by foreign publishers.
Yeah.
Speak of Amataidu's books, for instance, were being published by foreign authors, foreign publishers, sorry. And if they are being published in another market, that means that it will take some extra effort to bring them into our market. And so there were not many of them around. But books that were already published were already written and published by foreign authors and foreign publishers were easier to get into our system because they could be shipped easily. And
Yeah, that's my next question. I was going to ask you, did we have those books flooding the market because they were easily accessible?
Yes, I think they were easily accessible. And, you know, then there used to be these organizations that sell books for less. And
Yes.
these are used and donated books, so kind of similar to what you're doing now. These are used and donated books, and they are able to bring them in, and they sell them at 1 CD or 2 CDs. And I used to use my money to buy that. I didn't mind taking somebody's money and taking my parents' money to buy that because it was cheap and I could afford it. But then with the books by Ghanaian authors which were being written, which were being published in other markets, it was difficult to find them to buy. And I believe that's one of the main reasons why.
Did you ever ask yourself why Ghana doesn't have snow?
No, I didn't because I never happened to ask myself that question because I think I was able to differentiate between reality and then the books. But I yearned to live there, to live in another country, much more than now. I'm not so keen on going to live anywhere else, but I yearned to live there. It was something that I really, really hoped. And I would go to bed praying that I should wake up in another country, yes, because I wanted to see the snow. I wanted to
Eat their food?
Eat their food.
Oh my God, it was the food that always got me.
Experience all the things that they did. I wanted to skate. I wanted to, you know, to look out for mysteries and clues and things everywhere
Nancy
I go.
Drew kind of clues. Okay, I actually thought of forming a babysitters club.
Yes.
I used to live on a teacher's, like in the teacher's flat, and there were lots of kids around. So I was like, why don't we all come together and form babysitters club? Because I had read it.
Yeah.
And that brings me to the second question: what qualifies a book as children's book?
I think basically it's any book written for children, and a child is defined as someone between the ages of birth, someone who is between birth and adolescence. So, yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think children's books, you can't really put them in a box. They span various genres. So it depends on maybe the approach or the design of the book or how the book talks about a particular topic or theme or shares a story. So we have different kinds of books for different ages. So we have the easy readers.
Yeah.
We have the juvenile books. We have the young adults. And then we also have the picture books. That's for the babies. Yes. So I think children's books are really interesting because you can touch on various things. It just boils down to the approach of how these thoughts and topics are presented. For me, I don't have a strict criteria. I mean, when I get an idea, it also depends on the character, the perspective of the story. So if I'm telling the story from a child, like a narrator, a child voice telling the story, then that's for a child. So for me, it depends on the perspective and also the theme. You know, some topics might not be, should I say, too convenient or comfortable to talk about, especially for children who are very young, who are babies. So So maybe a topic like exploring sexualization, like a theme like that.
Yeah.
It will be more appropriate for young adults, people in the age range of 18 to 25. So all that goes into perspective when I'm considering writing for children.
Okay. And Kezia, on your app, I see so many books for kids. How do people's stories pass through your selection? Like, what do you look out for?
So, well, there's a criteria that we use to select books and use to categorize books.
Okay.
Our app is like a library, so we get a lot of books coming in. But then we look at a few things. What kind of book is it? Does it have pictures? Are the pictures predominant? How many words are on how many lines are on a page? How many sentences are on a page? How many words are in a line? What's the space and what's the size of the font? There are a lot of things that go into considering categorizing the books.
Okay.
And we group our books into 3 categories for children. We have 0 to 5, 6 to 8, and then 9 to 12. And the 0 to 5 are usually levels A to C. And level A is like wordless books, picture books, books that have like just one word on a page and predominantly pictures. Or books that have like no words at all, just pictures that a child can follow the pictures and determine what story it's trying to tell. To books that have no pictures at all and are just texts. That is for maybe 9 to 12 can read that, but even that we still consider what is a theme, what is a genre.
Okay. Do you think there's a market for Celeste's kind of books in this era of Diary of a Wimpy Kid? And there's another one though, it's very popular. I've forgotten. The children tend to go towards these books. Do you think there's a market for your book?
Yes, there is. I believe so. So for these books right here, which are titled Paddy Key and then Camouflage, these are books written for young adults, so
Okay.
from 18 to 25 years, because these books actually explore abuse, sexual abuse. It explores friendship. It explores university life. It also explores relationships. Yeah, so these books are basically for those kind of people,
those
and
kind of people.
there's a huge market for that.
That is for those above 18, but those below 18, because I run a church library for kids, and the way kids will come and say, I want the Secret 7. Auntie, please make sure you get me the rest of the series. It's rare to see a kid come and say, I want Peggy or Pons books. Do you really think we are promoting Ghanaian literature? Do you really think we are promoting our own stories as compared to these foreign stories? I'll come back to you whilst you think about it, Kezia.
So I think it just boils down to nurturing. It depends on what you're nurturing the kids with. In my home, I have a 4-year-old, and he's an avid reader, and he reads anything and everything because I have exposed him to anything and everything within his age range. Yeah. So if it's a book written by a Ghanaian publisher, once he sees it, he likes it, he reads it. Do you like the book? Yes, I do. Do you like the book? No, I don't. He's not going to touch it again. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. If he doesn't like it, he's not going to touch it. If it's a Ghanaian book, he can read it 1,000 times if he likes it. If it's a foreign book, he can read it 1,000 times if he likes it. So I think it boils down to the nurturing. If parents expose their children to local books or books with local content, and there are so many great Ghanaian authors writing for children now. There's so many pictures of books flying in my head right now, and we need to expose our children to that. If we expose our children to that, they will enjoy them, and they would want to read it. And it wouldn't always be about Diary of a Wimpy Kid or The Secret 7 or any of the other books. Yeah.
Selassie?
Yes, I kind of agree with Kezia. I actually agree with her. Yes, it boils down to the nurturing, because even looking back on my experience, if I had been exposed to that from the beginning, then that would definitely influence me, it would have influenced me differently. So I believe that parents also have a part to play, as well as publishers. Publishers also have a part to play. I think publishers are more focused on textbooks than books for pleasure, like books that would...
Don't you think that's because that's where the money is?
Yes, yes. I mean, that's where the money is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, to be honest, that's where the money is. But then there's a way to also creatively, you know, make sure that you produce books that children will read but would also learn unconsciously. So let me give an example. The KG curriculum, for instance. They practice that integrative learning, where several disciplines are taught in a more creative way so that children will be able to grasp it fast, grasp all the disciplines fast. So if stories could be created around these things, around maybe themes of the family, instead of just saying the family, like teaching children like that, if we can create stories around these various topics in the KG curriculum, I believe that would also help. And publishers need to look at that as well, because it's not always textbooks. Honestly, I didn't learn a lot of things from just textbooks. I read a lot. I read wide. I read a lot of creative books, fiction books, novels. And that's where a lot of the knowledge has come from. It has helped me in a long way. It has taken me very far. So we need to also emphasize creative reading for pleasure. People need to read for pleasure.
I have a very
just
funny
for the
story.
fun of it.
Yeah.
I didn't perform very well in BEC because I was just reading storybooks. I wasn't reading my textbook. So if I am asked to read, if I am learning, you think I'm learning, but there's a storybook inside your notebook.
You know why I started laughing when you said that? 3 days before we'll start BEC, I chanced upon, I was a prefect, assistant school prefect in my school. I chanced upon a young girl reading this very nice romantic novel. And I decided to exercise my power. I was like, young girl, you're too young to be reading this book, I'm seizing it. Just because I knew I wanted to read the book. I took the book home, made sure I stayed up all night to read the book. Meanwhile, I'm starting my BEC on Monday. It was that bad for me. So I could totally relate to that. But when you were talking earlier, this question, I wanted to interject and ask you this. Do children have a say in the kind of books that are being written for them? You shook your head. Let me come to you.
Yeah, they don't.
Who does?
Well, it's basically the publishers who do. In other markets, some publishers do research with children, with the books they write. So they write a concept, or sometimes they write the book and then they give it to a child or two to read, they sample their views and then they incorporate it. But here, I don't think publishers are doing that. And it's you can't entirely blame them. Our system is exam oriented. So the focus is not on leisure reading.
Yeah.
You agree?
Yes, I agree.
Why?
I don't think children here right now have a say or are asked of their views concerning what should be written for them. It's something that writers need to kind of sit back, observe, and tap into their childlike nature in them. The child is survived in the adults. So authors need to just tap into that and write for children. But children are not necessarily asked for their views on what should be written for them.
I like the fact that the two of you kept referring to publishers, because it makes my next question very tricky. So if we are saying that the publishers who have, like, they decide, they are the deciding factor, then where do parents come in? Because mind you, who buys the books for the children? So would you say, like, is there a fine balance between those writing the books or those publishing the books and the parents who buy? Who is influencing who? Who will take my question?
I can start this, Selassie will chime in.
Sure.
I think that it's okay. So who is influencing who? I think it depends on the parents' perspective and what parents buy books because maybe they see it as attractive and they feel like, oh, my child would love to read this, so they buy it. But the publisher is also publishing his books because he feels like this is a theme I think children should read, or maybe he has an idea or so about what children would like, so he would put it together and then sell it to the parents. The parents are the ones buying the books, obviously. So I think the publishers are essentially influencing the parents in a way.
Okay. Selassie? No, you know, one of the reasons why I'm asking, maybe because I'm spending lots of time with parents and kids, right? So in the library, you see parents who come to select books for their kids. They know precisely what they want their kids to read. The kids don't have a say. So the mom comes, she'll pick like 5 books. Those are the books they read. Sometime, like an hour or 2 after, the child will come back and say, can I change my book? The mom will say no. Then you have parents who come to the library and stand at the door and tell the child, go and pick the book you like. So if it's supposed to be, if it's the publishers who are influencing the parents on what to buy, are we having a fine balance there? Is there something wrong or are we doing something right? Selassie.
I think there are lots of stakeholders here. We have the publishers, we have the parents, we even have the school. And sometimes even the school influences what the parents buy.
Yeah.
So let's say some parents, as she rightly said, will just pick the books because they know precisely what they want. Maybe based on the school's recommendations, they decide to pick those books for their children. I think it's everyone influences what is given to the child here. So
and
parents,
the child is silent.
Yeah, the child is silent here. The child doesn't have that purchasing power. In the end, it's the parents who buy the books. They have the money to buy the books. So, of course, the child might want to pick a book just because it's colorful. That's where the publisher's influence comes to play. The publisher needs to make sure that the books that he is publishing or producing are attractive enough to children of that age.
Yeah.
Because you can't have a book with such a dull cover design with no illustrations and say that it's for children from 8 to 12. They won't pick it. They will just pass by it and then they will go and pick the foreign book that has all those colors and drawings and illustrations. So also the publisher's work comes to play here.
Okay.
So publishers need to be more
child-friendly.
Child-friendly, yes, when it comes to children's books.
Yeah.
And also schools need to incorporate the reading times, you know.
I missed that.
That creative part of the children. It's not just about passing exams. Have reading time in the curriculum, you know, have library time. I remember Morning Star School. When I was attending Morning Star School, we had library times, and that's when I had so much fun. Going to the library, we actually had a time where we watched a movie based on a book. We read the book before we watched the movie, we discussed. So library times were always fun for me. So I believe that schools also have a part to play in that as well.
What kind of titles do you think, or what kind of stories do you think we'll have if we allowed children to determine what is to be written? Do you think we will still have the books we have now? Do you think there will be a story called Cinderella, or do you rather see the black girl who is hidden under the chair or something? What kind of stories do you think we'll have?
I think we'd have interesting stories. I've actually had the opportunity to, allow children to write. I gave them the opportunity. I did some workshop with them. And it was quite interesting, the things they wrote about. The title was My Dream. The initial thought was to ask them to write what they wanted to be, like my dream.
Yeah.
But I just told them, write about your dream. The title is My Dream. And you get different perspectives. And I read one boy's story, and the story was about a dream he had about Jesus chasing him, different things.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see the creativity that came out of just telling children to write. So I think, yes, we need to allow children to, have a voice, have a say.
Would you love to read a book written by your son?
My son?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you think you'll be interested?
Mind-blowing.
It will be mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So when do you plan to let him start writing?
Well, if he shows interest, I am a kind of laid back parent. I allow my son to choose his own books. So the books I buy for him is usually influenced by what he says, what I see him like. So that's sometimes
So he has the purchasing power.
Yeah, he has a purchasing power, even though I have the money power. Sometimes I throw in a few things that I want him to read, but I just allow him to go out. And I think if he writes a book, it will be very interesting.
I'd love to read
I
it.
can just imagine the kind of things that
he would write. Okay. So lastly, earlier on you mentioned, you were talking about illustrations, right? And it's interesting to note that Ghanaian books are sometimes, or Ghanaian authored books for kids, are sometimes more expensive than the foreign ones. Do you think it's because of illustrations? And what can we do about that?
Yes, it's definitely because of illustrations, but of course, color as well, printing costs. Printing in color, especially when the whole book is in color, it's expected to be in color, it's a high cost. So I think we have nothing much to do about that. I mean, they are still going to be expensive. But I think that the government needs to come in terms of maybe cost of
the publishing
papers.
cost. Okay.
Yeah. Cost of papers, the kind of paper here in Ghana is quite expensive. It's called the bond.
Yeah.
If we had more recycled paper or paper that's less expensive, that would definitely help.
But do we have illustrators here in Ghana?
Yes, we do.
We do?
A lot of them.
A lot of them.
Are they expensive? Are
They are
they moderately?
Well, it's a range.
Yeah, some of
It's
them
a range. It depends on what you want to go
affordable,
for.
but-
Some are affordable, some are.
But the expensive ones are quite good.
They're good,
They are
very
very
good.
good.
That's why they are expensive.
Yeah, that's why they are
So
expensive.
averagely, if I'm trying to encourage my kid sister to write a book and she wants to do illustrations, how much do you think I should be willing to spend on an illustrator?
It just
I like the way you did it. It's like, Papa, don't even go there.
They're expensive.
Very.
Especially the very good ones.
Yeah.
So some could charge 3,000 an illustration. Some could charge 500, depending on also the number of illustrations
Wait,
that will
did
come
you
in
say
the
an
book.
illustration, like just a page?
Yes, or maybe an illustration for the cover.
Wow. Not even the content.
Not even the content.
3,000
just
Ghana
for the
cedi.
cover. Yes, they're very good ones.
Yeah,
that are
there's
like that.
some also, there are some good ones who don't charge as much. So you just have to do your homework, depending on what illustration you want and the budgets you have.
Yeah.
But making books in Ghana is expensive for family. It's from, you are even talking about far away. In Nigeria, bookmaking is not as expensive as
Yeah,
it
that's
is
true.
in Ghana, and it's not because they also import almost everything they have. But I on the projects I worked on, I worked with an illustrator in Ghana and another illustrator in Nigeria on the same project.
Yeah.
And while the person in Ghana was charging about $300 to $400 on one illustration, the one in Nigeria was willing to charge $50 on
That's
an
a vast
illustration. Yes. You see, and they are both about on the same level when it comes to those.
Do you think that's what is deterring wannabe authors from publishing their book? Because I'm asking one of the world's youngest author is 7-year-old. She's called Abjita Gupta. I think it's a he or she.
It's
It's a
actually
she.
It's a she, yes. And I tried doing research to see which Ghanaian books have been authored by young people that are making waves, but I really didn't see any.
yeah.
Do you think it's the cost of printers? Is it the cost of publishing? Is it that they don't know what to write? What is going on? Why are kids not writing their own books in Ghana? And what can we do about it?
We haven't encouraged kids to write. We haven't encouraged kids to write because if we have encouraged them, that world's best author comes from a family of writers.
Yeah.
So she has
The exposure.
the exposure. She can hit the ground running. She's building on something that has already been built. How many of our old authors have children who are also writing?
That's a good question. But must there always be someone who is from a family of authors? What can we do to encourage children to write?
I think, yes, I think I've also had that or felt that gap between even the old writers and the young writers. I think that the old writers also have to step up in a way to also encourage we the young writers who are coming up, because it's not, yes, as you rightly said, it's not everyone who come from a family of writers or who have that advantage.
Yeah.
So old writers, the Amaete Edus, the Amadakos, the Kofi Anidohos, I mean, they are doing great. They are doing great. I mean, Amaata Edu has a Center for Creative Writing and all of that. But I think that...
You want more?
Yes, I think that there should be some more mentoring, more coaching. Yeah, and I believe that young writers will be given the opportunity to come out. I think also there's not enough information about publishing as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I've spoken to a lot of people who always come asking a lot of questions about publishing, like how much would it cost? They don't really know how to go about publishing. They don't know how to go about even the costs. Sometimes they hear it and they are already, discouraged. So I think the cost also plays a part, and there's not enough information about publishing here in Ghana because people are still asking questions. They don't know, and there's no way to find out unless you go to a publisher and ask questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yes,
Before
please.
you come in, there are child writers in Ghana, I must say.
Can you give me some names?
There's this phenomenal little girl, I think she's about 6 or 7, who has written 2 books.
Okay.
Her name is Janelle Yimbi Atobara, and I can get you pictures of her books later, but this is a young girl whose mother is encouraging her to write because she has seen that her daughter has the flair and the interest in writing. If she doesn't have somebody like that to push her, she would lose this ability. She would lose the interest even at a point
writing.
in time. Yeah.
So if I start to write for kids, or I want to write a book for kids, what kind of journal do you think will sell more? Or what area should I focus on? This is a genuine question. Like, how do I go about it? Because at the end of the day, from all that she has said, there's cost involved when it comes to publishing or getting the books out there. So if someone is sitting at home right now and the person wants to write a book for kids, how should the person go about it? Because at least the person has to recoup one, and the person has to make sure that whatever he or she is writing would is able to grasp the attention of the child and then they will talk about it. Because again, you come to the library, people come and ask you for the 12 Hearts series. A lot of kids love that book. And you ask yourself, oh, madam, it's so nice. It's so nice. Can you bring me book 2, book 3? They're asking for it, which means she has gotten something right. She has captured the market. We have Peggy Opon's books. I think even at my age, I still read Peggy Opon's books. So what should the person do? What area should the person focus on? What kind of books do you think the person needs to write to get that attention from the kids? Who should I start with? Oh, she's looking at you, so I'm starting.
I think, well, for writing for children, I think the way you can touch them or capture them is to write about things they can relate with. So depending on the kind of level you're writing for, because in children's books we have different levels. So for young adults, for instance, I will talk more about the young adults because I'm largely in that. So things like friendship, things like relationship with even the opposite sex, things like exploring sexualization, things like school, struggles, pressures from family. All of those things are things that people can relate with. Love, young adults can relate with. So you see a lot of even people in SHS reading a lot of Halping books, Mouse and Bones, and you're like, hey.
What's happening?
Yes, this is something that they can relate with or they see in movies and they're attracted. So of course, if you write about things or topics that are relevant to them, they'll definitely want to read. And looking at writing for children, you need to tap into, as I mentioned earlier, that's childlike nature. Okay, so maybe you're an old person, you want to write for a child, you need to sometimes sit back and observe. Sometimes just walk around, in the neighborhood, listen to the conversations from children, have chats with children just to know what they think about, what they like to hear, what they like to read, what they like to see, and tap into that and put pen to paper and write.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kezia, do you have something to add to that?
No, I would agree with her basically. The first point is to research. And I would say research into the children, and not research as in go and look into books and write something. Research as in to talk to children. You can put a few things to paper and sample it with a few kids to see whether they would want, that's something they would be interested in or not. And children are very honest people. They'll tell you their opinions. And that is your saving grace, because it means that you're writing something that would sell to them.
If you had to write a book for just a quick one, this one's like, is it mental? That's how we used to call it just right?
Yeah.
If you had to write a book for a 5-year-old, 3 words, what would the title be? It's on the spot. Anything that comes to your mind.
For 3 years?
No, for
5 years.
5-year-old.
Okay.
What comes to your mind? I think I should have asked you first, because you're the author.
Yes.
Yeah. Ask the author first. I'm researching.
What will come to mind?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I would talk about people in my community or something like
That would be the title? People in my community?
Yes.
Interesting. Kezia?
I'm going to tap from my son because he likes this trucks. So maybe something like cars.
The title would be Cars.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I think I would write a book called Ampe Jinyaga. So, when we were growing up, there was this funny story. I think it was one of those, is it parables? How do they call it? Those fables. Yeah, I think
Fables.
Fables, thank you. That's the right word. it speaks of like the reason why we don't play ampe after 6 p.m. They said there was this girl who kept playing ampe after 6 p.m. and she got caught up in the sky.
Yeah.
So in Ever we say ampe junior get like she played ampe and then her heart dropped. So I think that's how it titled. Just so the child will be like, how can you play ampe and your heart will drop? But
Yeah.
I asked that because I think sometimes the reason why most people or most children are not drawn to certain books can be the titles. Because you said tracks. I've seen or I've met kids who come to the library and, Auntie, today I want to learn about volcanoes. They just see the thing.
Yeah.
They see tracks, they see this, then they just go for it. So that is to say, we should, as an author and as a publisher, you were right when you were saying that we should look at the interest of the child. And that brings me to my last question because we are running out of time. How should parents encourage their kids to read? And so it's a 2-in-1 question. And should parents hand over the purchasing power of books to the kids? Should the children have that power? So who should I start with? I think you.
Yeah. So it's a 2-in-1 question.
Yeah.
And the answer is simple and one. One way by which parents can encourage their children to read is if they give them the choice to choose what they want to read, guidedly. Because obviously, if your 4-year-old is going to choose a book, is going to choose a book and he chooses Harlequin, you wouldn't want him to read that. But guidedly allow the kids to choose their own books. And on the other side, the parents should be readers as well. I'll give you 2 examples. I thought I started reading, I fell in love reading when I was in class 3 or 4. But then I was telling my dad and he was like, no. When you were about 2 years, you would come into my study, and when I'm studying, you would pick a book and sit down and read. Again, I don't know if it's a picture or a video on my phone, but during the COVID crisis and the lockdown, I was reading a book. I was just at home reading a book, and then my son saw that I was reading a book. He went to pick a book, and he sat on the floor, and he started reading. He couldn't really read the words then, but he was talking about the pictures. And he would see this and say, the boy is going to play football or something. And he would turn and you see the boy is playing with a dog. And like, he couldn't read the exact words, but he had got the concept of reading. So basically, when children see you reading, they would be encouraged to read. But then if we keep saying kids should read, kids should read, kids should read, and we are not reading ourselves, they don't see us buying books, they don't see us holding books, we're always on our phone. My son knows that you can read on your phone because I read stories to him on my phone. So he knows that the phone is not only, or his tablet's not only for playing games or anything. He has to read on his devices as well. What they see us do is what they will do. So let's allow them to choose their books, and also let's also engage them and show them, not tell them that we are reading books. Yeah.
I like that. Madam.
Yes, for me, I think reading by the parents should start even when maybe the woman is pregnant, because child development actually starts from there. I don't know whether you've heard stories of people, listening to a particular kind of music, and then the child comes out and recognizes that music and dances to it.
Not to catch you, but I had a colleague who plays classical music. So whenever she's carrying a child, she had this big headset. Hi, Sabina. Then she will put it like at the sides of her room, and then she'll be playing. I'm like, what are you doing? This one likes classical music. Then she'll be playing it. So I've heard that.
Yes. So definitely reading should start from when the baby's in the womb. As a mother, you could read to the child whilst, waiting for that due time. Read to the child every single time. And once the baby comes out, we have bath books. We have books called bath books.
Yeah.
which allows children to play with the book in the water whilst they get their bath. So from that stage, you are nurturing them, giving them bedtime stories. I remember my grandmother, she would gather all of us and then tell us Anansi stories. And those stories, I still remember them. Some were not even about Anansi, but they were folklore, you know, oral tradition, all of that. We need to keep telling our children stories so that they don't lose touch of their culture. So I believe parents have an important part to play, because as a parent, you are the first point of contact.
Yeah.
And as Kezia rightly said, your children need to see you doing it. Your children need to see that you are reading, you are doing something, so that they can be involved. Read bedtime stories to your children, and definitely they'll become readers themselves. And I'll say that my love for writing was actually born out of reading, because I was intrigued by all the words and the worlds created by authors, writers. It was born out of reading. And once I read well, I began to write well. And once I write well, I begin to understand the language more. And that, in effect, affects my academics. So maybe I had a totally different experience from Kezia, but for me, writing and reading actually helped me in my academics. Wow. So it helps parents. Parents, nurture your children to read.
Would you recommend they hand over the purchasing power to the kids?
Yes, I would recommend that. That children can be allowed to pick their own stories. Just let them read a lot of things, of course, guidedly, as Kezia said. Just look at their interests. Sometimes not even about them wanting to be a writer. They want to read about the planets, Mars, Venus. Let them choose the books to read. And you see, as time goes on, you begin to see the things they are very much interested in, and then you can nurture them towards that particular skill. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So final words. Kezia, I want you to tell us a bit about the World Reader app, so the parents out there can, because that's another way they can get affordable books for their kids. So how do they go about it? And then Selassie, you tell us how we can get some of your books to buy, and any other place we can get affordable books.
All right.
Yes, please.
So, for Fali, to correct you, World Readers books are not affordable, they are free.
Oh, please, they are free.
Yes.
Free? They are not affordable. They are free.
The app is free, the books are free. If you have an Android phone, you just need to go to Play Store and download the Book Smart app. Some parents download the World Reader app, which is our youth app, and say we have books that are not suitable for children there. The World Reader app is our youth app, and it has a wide variety of books and a wide variety. We have Harlequins there, so if you download that for your child and the child reads that, then that's the guidedly I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then you can download the Book Smart app, which has books solely for children. It's totally free on your Android phone, or you can go to bbooksmart.com and you have access to our books on an iPhone or an Android phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all they need to do is to download. The parents.
They just need to download the app. It's a library, so it's just like you're walking into a library to pick a book and read. Okay. So you just need to download the library on your phone, and then you can walk into it anytime you want and read your book and pick a book for your kids. And we have local books there. That's something I must mention. We have local books
written in Tree or in English.
We currently do not have local language books.
Okay.
But there's a category for local language books, but there are no books populated there yet. But we have books written by local authors and published by local publishers, which are culturally relevant. The Naughty Coffee series you were mentioning is on our app, so
they should
go check it out. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Hi,
Yes.
Selassie.
Hi. So you can find my books at EPP Bookshop, and also you can also find it on booktigghana.com. That's on Instagram. You can also contact us directly on the number 050-220-8712, and you definitely get a copy of my books. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. I know you've enjoyed yourself. I would like to also add that you can get Selassie's books at the Goethe-Institut Ghana Library at Cantonment. It's just 50 CDs for the whole year. That's all that you have to pay, and get access to a wide variety of books. We just wanted to tell you that children can learn how to read. They are looking at you, the guardian. They are looking at how you access books or how you handle books. They learn from you, and there's no age limit. There's no, oh, my child has passed this age, so I can't teach the child how to read. You can teach them how to read even if they are 7 years old, even if they are 17. There's no age limit. So please, let's get reading and enjoy your day. Bye.